just an action-packed show deserves to be started with a graph.
Yep.
I found this graph, and I want to show everybody the graph that I found. There's New Zealand people on a working age benefit.
Right.
This is a fun one. So this
Yep.
bit here,
Yep.
that's a global financial crisis.
2008.
Okay. Yeah. So up it goes.
Mm-hmm.
That's COVID.
Yep.
Very bad. Lots of people on a benefit then.
Yep.
And this
Yep.
this bit where it gets really, really high, that's the last 18 months of national.
This is Christopher Luxon.
2 global crises. Not as bad as the government we've had for 12 months.
Dude.
Just something to think on.
It's time then.
Just chew on. Just ruminate.
I think
what an absolute war crime this government is.
Okay, so leave it up there. Leave that there. That's that graph there. And let's welcome to the show, Kieran McAnulty. Sir, good evening to you.
Hey, lads. How are you?
Fan favourite. Well, you were fan favourite last year as well. I think this is 2 years in a row, both you and Chloe. It's not bad.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Chewie does this thing where he takes us off tangents and ruins the whole show like he's just done. But seeing the graph is up there, Kieran, would you like to comment on it?
I do love me a graph, so good on you, Chewie. I'm with you, mate. I'm sure the audience at every public meeting that I've pulled out a graph appreciate them as well. But they do emphasize the point. Like you can state it as, oh, yeah. And then you pull that bad boy out and it's like, oh, yeah, right. Okay. And that's pretty telling, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, these are choices of this government. They are choosing to lay people off. They are choosing to pull investment in infrastructure and other things and stopping Kaingaora, building homes and all that sort of stuff. And then they point to us and say, oh, it's our fault that 12,000 construction workers are out of job. Give me a break.
That's 50,000 more people.
Yeah. And that's 50,000 homes that are impacted severely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are real people and they just don't seem to care.
And when you think about that, homes, 50,000 people, 50,000 homes, who knows, 150,000 people? Because how many people are in those homes? So
yeah, well, I mean, unemployment isn't an isolated thing. It impacts the family and the kids and everyone else that's dependent on that income, doesn't it? So
what a cheery way to look back on the year we've
I was just thinking that. It's just a real positive way to start. But
hey, but listen,
you're welcome. You're welcome. I do what I do.
I see Chewie, you're wearing the t-shirt. You want to give us a good close up for everybody else? What do you think of the t-shirt there, Kieran? Have you got any thoughts around that?
I love them, and I hope that there are many stockings in a few days' time when people go to the bottom and they find one of those absolute gems at the bottom of it. It'd be awesome.
And tell me this, from the inside looking out, did this lovely, lovely man, as we see here, as seen on One News, and Magenta, who's just off to the left there, did that get noticed by people in the chamber down below?
Yes, it did, for 2 reasons. I saw him walking in and pointed at him and said, "Hey, he's got one of those shirts on." and then the other reason it stood out is that great New Zealander, for the entire 7 or 8 years I've been in Parliament, has pretty much come to every single question time in a cannabis suit. Yep. And the first time I've ever seen him, either in Parliament or outside of Parliament, the first time I've seen him wearing something different, and it's a Nicky No Boats t-shirt. I mean, you couldn't write that script. Brilliant.
Yeah. We laughed pretty heartily when we asked Chris Hipkins last week, has this made it its way? Have you heard this in your office at all? And he just leaned back and went, yep, we've heard it in the office. And that was like, that's our Christmas present, Chewie. They know that the people outside of our little circle. It's funny, I did a little search on Twitter the other day for the hashtag, and it's well beyond us. Like it's well beyond us.
Oh, it's definitely a thing. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm not going to tell you where, and I'm not going to tell you the organisation because I don't want to out them. But I was at a meeting the other day where someone was describing a fraught construction process that they were involved in, and this was, someone that isn't involved in politics, and he said, but unlike Nicola and the ferries, we had a plan B, and then started to tell the story. And it went down so well. Everyone laughed, everyone clapped. And I just thought this is like the ferries issue has gone beyond those that follow politics regularly. Everyday New Zealanders are seeing this and thinking that was a real dumb thing, and these guys have cocked it up.
Yep. And look, we're going to get onto that story a bit later on tonight. What we'll probably do is maybe one of the last questions, Kieran, is ask you to speak into the news out today before we say goodbye and then move into that story. But let's have a look at 2024. I mean, the unfortunate thing is sort of a political commentator. That's what we are, Chewie, in case you never knew. That's what we do for a job. It's often kind of negative. You know, it's often kind of, this is wrong, this is wrong. Are we reflecting what politics has been in 2024, or are we missing some real good news stories?
I'm so sorry. I thought that was for Chewie. My mistake.
No, sorry.
No. Yeah.
No, I'm saying, are we reflecting what's happening in those big buildings accurately we've been a bit negative this year?
No, I mean, there's plenty to be negative about. It's pretty hard to be cheerful and put a positive spin on a pretty disingenuous and cynical government. And I think you're reflecting a real mood out there. I think it was starting to be picked up pretty early on. And I may have even said this on your show, I think, one of the times that I was on. Normally, when a party gets voted out of government, it takes about at least 18 months for people to start asking questions about what we would do differently. That started like 3 or 4 months in. It was extraordinary. And so it was part of the reason why we started our policy process earlier than what we normally do, because we picked up that there's a real appetite for this. And, you know, we've got a democratic process through the party to go through, but we've got to get going here. So no, I don't think so. I mean, you're giving an honest reflection of what's happening and to your viewpoint. And I think that's part of the reason why you're getting such a steady growth in views, because you're tapping into a sentiment that a lot of people share.
I was just talking to my partner tonight, and we were talking about Donald Trump, and we all know people who is kind of a fan of Donald Trump. And I'm like, yeah, but I was watching some clips over the weekend where pre-election Donald Trump was going, the stock market's going to go through the roof. I'm going to bring the cost of living down on day one. And then in the latest interviews for Time Magazine, he's like, oh, you probably shouldn't buy stocks because we can't really know what's going to happen in the future of the stock market. And like, no one can really change the price of groceries. So he's saying the opposite. And what I realized with Trump, and I think it's going to be interesting when the world has the next series of elections, is the world pretty much has voted for change. But what they don't realize, and Trump's a really clear example, is it's not better change. It's just change. And in that example in the States, it's far, far worse. It's like, I was saying to my partner, I was like, you break your leg on one day and then the next day you break your back. It's a change, but it's far worse than what it was the day before. And I wonder about our current government, and I wonder what's going to happen at the next election. I mean, we all know that one-term governments aren't really a very common thing in New Zealand, although Chippy kind of squared us up away from that. If we were following a first-past-the-post principle, it was more likely. But it makes me think what we're seeing in this government and what we're seeing in the polls, and Luxon still not being all that popular and stuff, they're running the country now like they're in their third term. And after the third term is normally when you get voted out. So the changes come to New Zealand, the changes come to America, the changes come around the world. But for some places, it's not a good change. I'm not sure if there's a question in that, Kieran. It's more of an observation.
Well, changes pretty much come everywhere. Essentially, almost every government that was involved in the COVID response has subsequently been voted out.
Yeah.
Those that have had elections anyway. And I don't say that to make excuses. It's just an observation. We accept that there was a mood for change last time. Understanding what was driving that is pretty important. But then also tapping into the growing disillusionment in this government and offering something that's tangible and credible and will actually address the things that people are worried about. So, it's becoming pretty clear that the National Party would say anything to get elected. They looked New Zealanders in the eye and told them that their tax plan added up, and then immediately upon election admitted that it didn't, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Luxon spent more time last week arguing was trying to manage arguments between Seymour and Peters. I've come to the conclusion that the reason that Luxon keeps talking about the time he ran an airline is because he can't talk about the time he ran a coalition because it's running away from him. It's honestly chaotic. The whole thing.
Did he run an airline? I hadn't heard that before. Did he run an airline? Huh,
well, I'm starting to doubt it because he hasn't mentioned it in 15 minutes. So who knows? But honestly, this government is like an episode of The Thick of It, and every day there's just something else that comes out. And I have a lot of faith in New Zealanders, and they can sniff out insincerity from a mile off. They can also sniff out a bullshitter. And so when ministers are looking them in the eyes and saying things are better now, they know that's not the case. And I think they'd rather people come out and say, look, we gave this a go. It didn't quite work out, so we've got another plan.
Yeah.
Instead of spending their whole time blaming the previous government for things that are quite clearly as a result of their decisions.
I think what you just mentioned there, the word comes to mind, gaslighting. And it's funny, I wrote gaslighting down to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the latest thing is all of a sudden, Chewie, we're not getting those EV charges we were promised. Yet they're saying, we'll still hit our targets. You know, the police numbers, the police numbers haven't hit what they should do. And they're still saying, oh no, we'll still reach our police targets. You know, we're still going to reduce smoking as they're incentivizing more smoking. It's like the gaslighting that's going on is unreal, and the broken promises. And you throw in there things like the student loans for nurses promises, and this. There is, I did a tweet or a post on Blue Sky, whatever that's called, a blart, I don't know, that said it is now technically officially easier to write a list on what they have kept rather than what they've broken, because the broken list is so much longer. It's just unreal. It's unreal. It's exactly like Trump. You know, I'm going to be in charge of the stock market. Oh, don't trust the stock market. I'm going to be in charge of cost of living. Oh, don't trust the cost of living. It's exactly the same. Chewie, you should say something, by the way.
I should say something. I'm just wondering what sort of runway that they have when they're pissing off the nurses union, the junior doctors, the teachers, the maritime union. Like that's a lot of people. That's people with kids, people without kids, people with EVs. Like there just doesn't seem to be a lot for the rank and file New Zealander that thought that things were going to be better.
I think it adds up, and it's easy to forget that they've actually only been in 12 months. It's a lot of broken promises in a short period of time.
Yeah,
it does feel like a speed run.
Yeah, but it also they are trying to hoodwink people in areas where it's so obvious and that people really care about. So to say that the cuts to health don't affect the front line, then people go to the ED and they can't get seen. They can see the nurses and doctors working their ass off, but they just simply don't have enough resources. My local hospital in Masterton is 40 nurses short, and they swear black and blue there's no hire freeze, but they're not allowed to hire more. So, you know, I look at the two areas that I'm responsible for, local government. They promised New Zealanders that their water plan would be cheaper, and it's just not. People are getting double-digit rate rises because councils can't afford to do the water stuff. And here's the thing, that the only way that their water plan adds up is if they significantly reduce the amount that they say has to be spent. So instead of working on a 30-year projection like we did, they deliberately worked on a 10-year projection and then says, oh, no, this adds up. It doesn't. It's going to get worse. They promised they would build more social houses than the Labor government and immediately reneged on that. They said they would build 1,000 more homes in Auckland, but in 2026, the number of homes in Auckland are going to go backwards 200. This stuff adds up real quick, and people are starting to see it in things that they care about, and it's not what they voted for.
Yeah,
we're seeing that here in Dunedin, the site that I asked you about earlier in the year, down the road from me here, still empty. A clear site for KO houses, still empty. Some sites around Dunedin have been cancelled, and there's more to come. People will start to notice this. There's a critical mass, and I think because they have tried to front load all of this, it really, really sticks out. Have you seen, speaking of the councils and the water plan and all of that sort of thing, have you seen Simeon Brown's comments today?
It's a latest edition of latest chapter of this government trying to deflect all responsibility onto councils, so that when there is the inevitable backlash, they can say, "Not us." Whereas in fact, it actually is the government. They're the ones that stuffed up water reform. We're talking the thousands of dollars a year of every ratepayer in the country because the government stuffed it up. And what's patently clear is that the rating system is stuffed and needs to be fixed. We did a review on it. The recommendations were there, and Simeon Brown dismissed it as woke nonsense. And now the only option councils have is rates. So it's only going to go in one direction. And honestly, every time someone opens up their rates bill and gets a surprise, don't blame your councils. Obviously, there's things that they do that we don't agree on. That's why we have elections. But the reason it's going up so quickly and will continue to go up is because this government has stuffed it up.
And we always got to remember that this current government, they're the ones who tore you guys apart for mandating things from central government for councils. That's the way they sold it. And today I watched some of that press conference and I was listening to Wee Simeon, and it was just like, how can you mandate what they're going to do in their local bodies from central government? This is the gaslighting. It's exactly the gaslighting in. This is what you ran against, and now you're doing it. And how can you do now what you said the last lot couldn't do? We have you've probably heard this, Kieran, but we have this rule. Our most basic rule is we will hold this government accountable to the standard they held you guys, or the standard they set for themselves, like when they make a promise for 10,000 EV chargers. Yeah. That's their standard. That's not ours. That's not necessarily yours. That's what they said. And one of the things they said was the evils of centralizing everything and all these edicts coming from Wellington. And it's exactly what they're doing now. And we have to tell people and remind people. And it doesn't even matter to me whether that's the right or wrong decision. What matters to me is that's what they said was wrong and bad, and now they're doing it. That's their standard, Kieran.
That's 100% correct. I mean, if they held themselves to the same standard they held us, they'd be calling for an early election already. You know, the fact is that they said anything and everything they could to appeal to the broadest range of people, even when it contradicted itself. And I'm quickly coming to the conclusion that they never had any intention to keep some of these promises. They just hoped that they'll get rid of it and then people will get over it. Well, I'm not sure they will. They went around the country promising everyone a new road, and then we look at the budget and there's a $6 billion hole in it. Could you imagine what they would have said if we produced a transport budget with a $6 billion hole?
Yeah.
And it even comes down to the local level. Look, we have spoken on this show recently about the proposed toll on the New Manawatu Tararua Highway. Now, there were massive public meetings, a huge backlash on that. The two local national MPs, Suze Redmayne and Mike Butterick, refused to oppose the toll. They were asked repeatedly by the locals, will you stand with us and oppose this toll? And they said no. And the day that proposal was scrapped, they both put a video out on social media celebrating the decision. And I thought, you disingenuous so-and-sos, but people notice this stuff.
Yeah.
And it all adds up. Another 2 years of this, and it might be a very interesting election.
Yeah, we found that here in Dunedin, Chewie, all these mayoralty candidates who are like against the redevelopment of George Street. Who do you think was fucking cutting the ribbon when that actually went through in this amazing location that they were against? Went down there and popped the champagne, didn't he? And cut the ribbon, was like, I'm so proud of you, Dunedin. No. You were against this, you dog. Sorry, Chewie, you're in.
I think it's certainly like in your own electorate, that's got to be noticed. Those people that went to those meetings and saw who was there to front for the things that concerned them and who wasn't there. That stuff gets remembered. And I think of the electorates that had that flipped last election. And I know, how hard a lot of the Labor electorate guys are hustling now, because there is so much to hustle for. There are so many things that that are important to people, and especially in the regions, that are important to those people, that National we don't have to listen to you anymore. You voted for us. That's all we needed from you.
Yeah.
Thanks. And this is where it gets won. The next election gets won and lost. You often hear people
go, politics. Sorry, Chewie.
No, you often hear of people going, "Hey, look, I don't like their party, but this MP is a good electorate MP, so I'm going to vote for him." That's quite a common thing, but I don't see that even in comments outside of my bubble. I don't see people talking about national MPs in that same way.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that is one of the benefits of MMP, is that some people choose to split their votes. I mean, for a long time on the West Coast, the National Party won the party vote right throughout the key years, but they always voted Damien because they knew he was a good local MP. He got tipped out for 3 years and then came straight back and then held it until the last election, and so some electorates do think like that, but it's the greatest irony of New Zealand politics is that rural provincial areas traditionally vote national. Nationals never looked after them, ever. And small rural communities have never been served by a hands-off free market approach. They slowly wither away. It's those governments that are willing to invest in them, usually Labor governments, that help them out. And so, there's going to be many examples like that people will be able to talk about. But the most heartbreaking thing at the moment for us that are based in our various communities is we can see people we know and have grown up with that are hurting as a direct result of this government's policies. Emergency housing is the perfect example. So they promised that they would reduce the numbers in emergency housing, not by housing people. The people that are housed are going into the houses that were paid for and built by the last government. It's come out as a result of Scrutiny Week and other OIAs, etc., that a massive chunk of the people that are the massive reason why the numbers are dropping is because they're just not letting people in. And it is this manufacturing the numbers to prove a point, not because they've solved homelessness, they're making it worse, but because they're saving $20 million a year. And you think they're putting that into community housing? Nah, it's going straight into the centre. Yeah. And so that example shows you where their motivations are.
Hey, I'd like to. There's another story that popped up late today that I haven't put in the show notes, but I thought maybe we'll do it with you. I know probably Isha Verrill's the official spokesperson for health and should be doing it there, but there was an announcement. Well, it was actually an exclusive to TVNZ. This government's leaking like a sieve at the moment. There was an exclusive on TVNZ. There was an exclusive on 3 News, which we'll get to later. But there was one about health. I think maybe you guys have already reported it. I think this is the official exclusive on 1 News.
It's the Sunnies.
I think this is actually this footage. I joke. I joke and I jest. There is a story we're going to look at, but me and Chewie have been a little bit critical of the Labor digital footprint, Kieran, and I would like to tip my hat to your TikTok account people at the moment. They're doing a real good job. Really, really good job. Really good job.
Well, that's good. They'll probably will see this themselves, but I'll make sure I pass it on tomorrow nonetheless.
Let's have a look at this, though. Remember, we get rid of the backroom people. It's not going to impact the frontliners. Remember that.
Axing hundreds of IT roles at Health New Zealand could lead to, quote, catastrophic failures. That's according to risk assessment analysis by Te Whatu Ora's.
Apparently IT could possibly impact the front line, maybe.
Team that's been leaked to 1 News. The union representing health staff is warning patients could die if the cuts go ahead. Senior political reporter Benedict Collins has more.
That'll be one. Oh, that's too. I was going to say something too cold. I was going to say that'll be one less off the public health ticket then, so to save some money. But no, that's even too harsh for me, maybe.
Annex is hovering over 653 data and digital staff who help run our health system, as Health NZ looks to slash costs. IT upgrades also on the chopping block.
It is likely that patients will...
Can I just ask, hang on, I just thought of something. IT upgrades are on pause, but Luxon was able to upgrade the equipment in his office even though the equipment that was there worked all through COVID for Jacinda. But in the health system, IT upgrades are on the got a hold on those. That's interesting. Just kind of putting that out there. Just putting it out there.
Injury or death. It is as serious as that.
One News has obtained a document revealing Health NZ's own experts believe many proposed changes come with extreme risk.
Doctors and nurses need the best IT system that they can get to provide the patient care.
The detailed analysis points out a series of concerns, including a 30-year-old IT system at Auckland Hospital, which Health NZ says is at imminent risk of catastrophic failure.
Yeah,
The
but that
risk
could
of
mean
clinical
any-
information such as referrals getting lost, which could see patients falling through the cracks and missing out on care. And that emergency responses will be compromised during major disasters with a reduced ability to coordinate.
It looks like there could be
None of that feels that bad though, right? I mean, that's okay, I think. We'll just let him. This is actually a really interesting point because I think this is Magenta. I think that's the CE. Knows nothing about it and tries to undersell the leak.
Coordinate.
It looks like there could be dire consequences, though, if you proceed with some of these plans that you're looking at.
It's very early input, I understand. I hadn't even seen it.
The frank assessment news to Health NZ's boss.
We want to go into this with eyes wide open, and I really do appreciate that our staff are putting their thinking caps.
I appreciate the staff has leaked this to TVNZ. That's what she's actually saying. It's beautiful.
Into this with eyes wide open, and I really do appreciate that our staff are putting their thinking caps on and assessing the potential impact of these proposals.
Yeah, do you think this is kind of a whistleblower act here, this document coming to One News?
Oh, not at all.
The advice also warns mass digital job losses will lead to more outages and incidents and decreasing quality of care and safety for patients.
That doesn't sound good.
We have some standards and expectations of maintaining service continuity, so that's not negotiable.
The former health minister
Right.
says the message is clear.
The government is being warned here that these cuts could seriously put patient safety at risk. They need to stop them.
The health minister wouldn't be interviewed, saying it was an operational matter, but added he's been reassured the health reset is being undertaken in a careful and considered manner. Benedict Collins.
We can't, I mean, you guys probably can't as well, Kieran. The idea of the CEO talk, this is a reset. This is a health reset. And we're just going to reset it and continue using 30-year-old technology at our biggest hospital. But look, as I said, that's not in the show notes, but you're here. Thoughts?
What really gives me the shits is when ministers instruct departments to cut X billion out of their budgets, and when the consequences of that direction comes forward, they say that's an operational matter. Front up, Shane Retty has told the health department to find $1.4 billion worth of cuts. And this is what happens when you do this. The hospitals without enough workers and doctors and nurses is what happens when you do this. Health New Zealand actually are doing what the government has told them to do.
Yeah.
And so he shouldn't be so gutless as to put the CEO in front of them, who has no choice but to defend it. He should be the one that's fronting it. We're seeing it across the board. We're seeing it in police. We're seeing it in transport. We're seeing it in housing, across the board. Ministers are claiming, and social development is a prime example. I know that's an operational decision. Rubbish. It's your decision. So front up, because this is what happens as a result of what you've decided to do.
And the other thing, and Marjappa said it then, basically we have an expectation of outcomes that we're going to reach. It's the same sort of thing, right? Like I remember working for a radio station where the boss there gave us announcers this conversation talking about David Letterman and the prep that David Letterman does for his show and how he gets ready, to try and encourage us. I waited for the appropriate time and everyone had left, and I just said to him, when you give me 23 writers like David Letterman's got, then I'll produce for you the same content that David Letterman does. And it's the same sort of thing. We're cutting, but you have to have exactly the same, if not better outcomes. It's just, it's some kind of parallel universe that doesn't exist. Chewie?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts. This is like like this is a very Dunedin analogy. I'll apologize.
Spates? Has it got spates in it?
So you were silly and you didn't order firewood back at the start of the year, and now it's winter. You got nothing to burn. So you have a look under your house. You got all these wooden beams holding your house up. You surely don't need that one. Maybe you don't need this one. Maybe you just keep on taking it out so you got wood to burn, and eventually your house falls over. Like, this is what it feels like. Let's just kick out this beam and see how long it can carry on for. And we've said this right from day dot, right from when these health cuts especially were first rolled out. This feels like setting the scene for full privatization.
The thing is, too, with that analogy,
enough foundations.
Yeah, you hadn't had a chance to rebuild the floorboards before you started burning them again. That's the thing. We've been here before. This is exactly the playbook that happened under Key. It was just happening under someone that was a bit more charismatic and articulate. And so it's exactly the same thing. They cut the funding. They claim that the services are fine. They keep telling the public that. It's reached its severe consequences a bit earlier this time around because they're doing it in a real fragile time for us. We're coming out of the pandemic. The economy hasn't, recovered like they promised. In fact, the decisions that this government has made is prolonging the recession. 15 economists that signed that letter have demonstrated that. We can't afford to, or we're not in a position to withstand this onslaught because we didn't get a chance to rebuild properly. And so it's every warning that was on that TVNZ story tonight should be heeded because these people know what they're talking about. Not just because they're experiencing now, but they've seen it before.
I'd also like to say, with the use of a particular word when it described that IT system, catastrophic. Yeah, in a report like this, that isn't a word that's thrown around lightly. No. That is, there's literally like levels that you describe. Catastrophic is right at the top. This is the worst possible outcome, as that system goes down.
I mean, there really aren't many words worse than that to describe something. And the thing with health professionals is they're very deliberate with their wording. Because if you use hyperbole when you're giving out a diagnosis, it can cause unnecessary distress to people. So they are very deliberate in how they say things. When health professionals say this is going to be catastrophic, you better bloody believe them because it will be.
Yeah. Hey, is there anything in the chat? Chewie, do you want to have a look in the chat to see if there's any particular questions that we want to pass through to Kieran? But whilst Chewie's doing that, Kieran, I have a couple of questions for you. The first is, and we won't go into great detail because we're going to actually play the video, but we hear that one of our 2 ferries is basically going to be unusable in 12 months' time because there's going to be no wharf to park at it. Do you have a thought around that?
Well, they've lied, haven't they? And you can add that to the list of all the other lies that they've told. They knew that their plan wouldn't add up, and they knew that when they cancelled the ferries that it was a massive mistake, and for 12 months they were telling the country that all is in hand, and even last week when they announced it, they told us that all was in hand, all the while knowing that actually one of those boats won't last it till the end of the time frame that they announced just days ago. You actually couldn't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
You could have a satirical TV show and it not be half as bad as what we're witnessing in our own country.
The one thing that was good from it is the announcement last week. The announcement of the announcement is it did keep our Nikki No Boats merch still current for at least another 3 months. So, from a personal point of view, we want to say thanks for that. I saw a really good
those t-shirts are good till 2029 at least.
All right, you heard it here first, people. We heard it here first. Chewie, do you want to get to any chats there before I ask one last question? We ask one last question.
Yes. Where are we? We've got a question here from Brian Turner. Will Labor, or I guess, do you have plans to revive Three Waters in the next election?
Not in the form that it was. That was a one-off opportunity, really. There's a reason it took 6 years to get to the point that it did, because it is a massive structural change. If it had been paused, then there was a chance. Keeping in mind the changes that we made to get it to the point where most councils were happy with, so the affordable water reforms, different to what Three Waters was, but it's all gone. It's completely gone, and I don't think that there's the time or, frankly, the appetite to do that. The only option we'll have is try and make something of this dog's breakfast that this government has set up. And so you can't say with any detail right now, because it needs to play out to see how bad it's going to get, but it's not going to be good. We know that much, and it's going to cost ratepayers a lot of money, but it'll be on us to fix it, because these guys won't.
And we've got a question here from Rachel D. What's Kieran's thoughts on the RSB?
Look, I've learned in politics, well, in life really, is that don't pretend you know something when you don't. And so what's RSB? Have I had a mind blank here? What?
Regulatory Service Bill, the dull, dangerous cousin to the Waitangi, to the Treaty Principles Bill. We were talking about it last week.
I'm with you now. Sorry.
Yep.
So
right.
These bills are supposed to be non-controversial technical changes that are supposed to just be put forward from departments to improve bills. They don't warrant a bill on their own, but clumped together. It's quite a regular parliamentary process. If there's anything in there that goes beyond that is controversial, that is more than a technical change or something, that'll be a big deal. It'll be a massive deal, and it'll be the government trying to slip something under the radar, because there's a lot of goodwill behind the scenes around agreeing to special procedures in the House for these sorts of bills, because they are of that nature. So if there is something like that, then that would be a breach of good faith. But I'd need to have a look at exactly what it is that people were concerned about to be able to respond specifically.
We'll send you an interview we did last week with someone who's delving deep into it and give you a heads up on what they're thinking at least.
Okay, thank you.
And any other questions, Chewie, or shall I wrap with my last two?
Lots of comments, but no questions.
Okay, so this is a bit of the cheesy finish of the Christmassy thing, Kieran. But from a political point of view, looking to 2025, a couple of predictions from you, things to look forward to and things to be aware of. Anything come to mind?
From a political observer and a political commentator point of view, the changeover from Peters to Seymour will give you guys a lot of stuff to talk about, I suspect, for the remainder of the term. So potentially that's something to look forward to. But from my perspective and from our perspective, I think that next year looks positive. I think that people are willing to push back on what the government is doing. We've seen examples of that already in localised areas. And so next year could really be a watershed moment in New Zealand politics, and that people said, actually, stop, we've had enough. And so that could well be something to watch out for.
Cool. Hey, dude, thanks so much. Sorry. Right, honourable dude. Thanks so much for... oh, no, there's one other. Because you said you've seen the Friday night show, eh?
Yeah.
I get the sense from that tone you know what I'm going to ask you about. That feels like it's...
Well, who knows? You might throw a curveball, but I have a suspicion.
We have a Friday night host. Name is Emily, and she's tried to get a hashtag going, and I can see it's popping up in our channel from other people. That's hashtag Hottie McAnulty. And I don't know what the male to female version of a bromance is. That's just like like I think you're cool, but maybe we should get you on a Friday night show one day. I think it'll make Emily's highlight. She is spoken for, by the way, so it's more kind of an admiration type thing. But how do you feel about the Hottie McAnulty title there, sir?
I'm a massive fan of Emily's as it happens. I watch the Friday night show from time to time, and I think they both do great. It's a great addition to what you guys do during the week.
Yeah.
But I was mortified, to be honest. And look,
can I stop? Just pause. Just be careful, because the more mortified you are, the more likely it is it turns into a t-shirt very, very shortly. Now continue, please, sir.
The truth of the matter is, I'm pretty confident that if they met me in real life, they may reevaluate. And it reminded me actually of a time on Instagram. It was a few years ago now. I got a random message from a New Zealand woman. It said, "You're cute. How tall are you?" And I replied, "Not very." And she said, "Okay, thanks." And that was it. So yeah, look, I don't cope very well in situations like this, but I'm sure equilibrium will reach itself very shortly.
Hey, thanks so much for coming and having a chat. Hopefully you get a bit of a break over some. Although with this whole kind of like submission process for the treaty principles bill closing on the 6th of January or something, it's like,
yeah,
how's it going to stop? But I'm trying to move away from that subject very quickly, Kieran. This is what I'm trying to help a little bit.
It's good that you're not drawing attention to it, Pat.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Yeah, that was smooth, man.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, hopefully you'll get a good break. And thanks for being a part of, communicating with us. And look, I'll say this publicly. I know that you kind of said to a few other labour rights, these guys are okay. We genuinely appreciate that, and thank you for sort of being our advocate within that in that realm as well. And yeah, it's been a year, and we look forward to another one.
The thing is, as you approach the end of the year, you naturally reflect on the year that's gone. And I think that one thing you guys can be really proud of is that over the space of the last 12 months, you have carved out a significant portion of the mediascape with this podcast, and it's only going to continue. And I think you'll get more and more people that are keen to come on and talk about stuff because of what you're building up. And I think just good on you. And you've worked bloody hard. I hope you have a great break.
Yeah.
And hopefully we get a chance to have a yarn again next year.
Yeah. And next year we'll make sure the Labour Party conference works and gets together. And that'll be choice.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully. It's in
awesome.
Auckland next year, so that'll be cool.
Oh, I don't know. Can we go to Auckland, Chewie? Maybe. I don't know about that. We'll see. We'll
find a way.
All right, Kieran, we'll let you go. Thanks for giving us some time tonight. All the best, and have a good break, and we'll catch you in 2025.
Cheers, lads. Merry Christmas,
right,
everyone.
Cheers, mate.
Merry Christmas. All right. Oh, good timing. Just before Kieran leaves the waiting room, so he sees it at the end. I hope Emily saw that. That was for you, Emily, that last couple of questions.